Gentleman from Tennessee reserves.
Reserve.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
I yield myself 4 minutes.
Gentleman recognized.
Madam Chairwoman, I suppose I should be saying thank you. I will get a huge tax cut under the Republican tax cut plan, as will the majority of those people sitting here, the majority of our colleagues in Congress, who are, like me, fortunate enough to be millionaires already. But forgive me if I'm in no mood to say thank you, because I was elected not just to represent millionaires, but to represent...
Suspend. The committee is not in order. Take your conversations, please, off the floor. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. I was elected not just to represent millionaires, but to represent aspiring millionaires, working families, seniors, veterans, and for all of them, for anyone who isn't already a millionaire, this budget is a slap in the face. With all of the problems facing our country right now, all the people struggling to get ahead, it is unfathomable to me that this Congress could look at people like me and say, hey, that guy, let's give him more money. In fact, let's give all millionaires hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax cuts. And really, I'm small potatoes. President Trump, according to his financial disclosure, will get hundreds of millions of dollars in tax cuts. Where's all that money coming from? If you're listening to this and you're not a millionaire, probably from you. To pay for our own tax cuts and the tax cuts for wealthy donors, Republicans are going to increase taxes on 45% of American families with children. And that's just the start. Seniors, people with disabilities, and low-income families will see their health care cut. Poor seniors will lose benefits that help them keep food on the table and their homes heated in the winter. Veterans benefits, meals for hungry school children, programs that make education affordable and job training available, investments that generate economic growth and create good-paying jobs are all at risk in this budget. They are also cutting corporate tax rates, which we will be paying for by plunging our nation into deeper and deeper debt, giving multinational giants another advantage over small and mid-sized businesses in the name of perpetuating the myth of supply-side economics. Supply-side failed. They renamed it trickle-down, but nothing trickled down. Now it's job creators, and when that fails, maybe they'll call it, I get mine now, you get yours later, maybe. But whatever they name it, it's a sham. This plan is a hoax on the American people, and it will make most people's lives more difficult. So forgive me if I am in no mood to say thank you for the extra money in my pocket. With millions of Americans struggling and scraping to get ahead, and with my tax cut increasing their challenges, I cannot begin to justify my extra money. And quite frankly, I cannot fathom how my Republican colleagues are able to justify theirs. With this budget, Republicans aren't just passing the buck, they're pocketing it. With that, I strongly urge my colleagues to vote no on the Republican budget. And I have the great honor of yielding 1 minute to the distinguished minority leader, Ms. Pelosi.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. I thank him for his great leadership as the ranking member on the Budget Committee in the House, and I thank all of the members of the Budget Committee for their great work to make this budget that was proposed earlier, the Armith budget, a statement of our values. And that's exactly what a budget should be. A federal budget should be a statement of our national values, what is important to us as a country. Thank you.
The committee will be in order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Please take your conversations off the floor. Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll say it again. Our federal budget should be a statement of our national values. What is important to us as a nation should be reflected in the priorities that we place into that budget. And I just can't, this budget that is before us, proposed by the Republicans, is just the opposite of that. It is accompanied by the tax proposal that they put, one of the biggest transfers of wealth to the wealthiest people in our country, in our country's history. Every time they do it, they make it worse. But let you be the judge. Is it a statement of our national values to cut $1 trillion from Medicaid, to cap and take Medicaid down a bad path in order to give tax cuts to the richest people in our country? I don't. Is it a statement of our values to take $500 billion out of Medicare to give a tax cut to the wealthiest people in our country? Our distinguished ranking member has listed some of the things that would be cut if we went down this unfortunate path posed by our colleagues on the other side. This is their budget that steals from the middle class, steals hundreds of billions of dollars from critical job-creating, wage-increasing investments in infrastructure, job training, and clean energy. It harms veterans, it cuts education, it abandons rural America as it guts education. This is really a mystery to me, because when you cut education with stiff competition, this is one of the worst budget decisions that you have made, because nothing brings more money to the Treasury than investing in education, early childhood, K through 12, higher education, postgrad, lifetime learning for our workers. That is how you grow the economy. That is how you bring money to the Treasury, not by cutting it in order to give tax cuts to the wealthiest people in our country. Is it a statement of values to cut that education so that you have a tax cut that benefits 80% of it, 80%? I know you don't want the public to hear this, and I can understand why.
The gentleman's correct. The House is not in order. Gentlewoman's recognized.
How could it be a statement of the budget of the American people, of values of the American people, to cut education of our children in order to have a tax cut that 80% of it benefits the top 1% of people in our country? It's just not right. And as they do that, the deficit hawks, which seem to be an endangered species on the Republican side of the aisle these days, are adding over $2 trillion, close to $2.4 trillion to the deficit, not counting debt service, interest on that national debt. And then they say, oh, that's okay. We need to increase the national debt by trillions of dollars so that we can give tax cuts. And where do the tax cuts go? $2.6 trillion to corporate America. And guess what happens to the middle class? $470 billion in tax increases to the middle class. About $500 billion in increases to the middle class, $2.5 trillion in tax cuts from corporate America. Again, adding so much to the deficit. Now they say, oh, trickle-down economics, it's going to pay its own way. We'll get that money back. Not so. Never happened. Nonsense. But don't take it from me. No less a figure than Bruce Bartlett, who worked for Congressman Jack Kemp, a real supporter of supply-side economics, and as was said, supply-side turned into trickle-down, et cetera. As a proponent of supply-side economics, he said, we never said it would pay for itself. We just advocated as an economic approach. But anyone who says, and this is his quote, that the whole supply-side dynamic scoring, pay for itself part of this argument is all nonsense. It's not true. He went on to say that it was bull. You finish the sentence. So here we are at a place where we can increase the deficit, decrease job creation, hurt the middle class, benefit the top 1%, add to the deficit, the national debt in historic proportions that would be very hard to come back from, deficit hawks, if any of you exist over there. Instead, we have an opportunity today for a better deal for the American people. Better jobs, better jobs, better pay, better wages, better future, where we lower costs for America's working families and middle-class families, and where we prepare them with the tools for the economy of the 21st century. So I thank the gentleman, the distinguished gentleman from Kentucky, the chair of the Bourbon Caucus, for his great leadership in bringing a better budget that is a statement of our national values, that supports American workers with responsible tax reform, calls for parity between defense and non-defense, defends and strengthens ACA, and protects Medicare. Every time the Republicans come to the floor and try to stack the deck even further for their wealthy friends, we have to have this conversation. Democrats will fight these tax cuts and this unfortunate, deceptive budget that they have on the floor. I urge my colleagues to start by voting no today and continue to the fight with a conversation with the American people to fight this unfortunate path they want to take us down, the road to ruin. I urge a no vote and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Kentucky reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky reserves.
Go back.
Gentlewoman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'm going to be brief in my closing comments. But I do want to ask my colleagues to consider this. Are we proud of a country where we're leaving our children and grandchildren in further and further debt? During our discussion in this chamber, we have shared our ideas for building a better America, an America that we would be proud to entrust to future generations.
Committee is not in order. Gentlewoman is recognized.
During our discussion in this chamber, we have shared our ideas for building a better America, America that we can be proud of to entrust to future generations. And while it requires confronting real challenges along the road ahead, it is undoubtedly worth the journey. So first, our budget forces the federal government to live within its means, just like hardworking Americans and small businesses do on a daily basis. Second, our budget identifies wasteful spending and finds much-needed savings and reforms for unsustainable mandatory spending. In fact, our committee has put forward the largest reform package for mandatory programs that has been seen in 20 years. Third, our budget calls for a robust funding of our military, ensuring the resources and will allow us to be ready and protect our mainland. It also starts the process of restoring our military readiness, which suffered dramatically during the Obama administration. And finally, our budget is the golden key that unlocks pro-growth tax reform and takes us one step further to the great ideas unveiled in the framework last week. Without a question, our budget plan reflects American values and shared priorities. I urge my colleagues to join me in their support to win for all Americans, because doing so will begin to ensure a brighter and a better future for future generations to come, and I urge a yes vote. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
All time for general debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 553.